And thanks for joining us on this third Friday. And it's great to have an esteemed panel, some really cool wine industry people. Donnie Carinas is having some technical difficulties, which you would expect from a farmer, let's be very honest. And so we won't hold that against him. And he's hopefully going to join us some way through the webinar. But this is our third workshop. And just to recap what we did for the last couple of weeks and why we're doing this, because that's important. While we were sitting during lockdown doing very little, we thought, how can we help to some extent? Wine Cellar has been trading quite well over the last couple of months. And really there's going to be a whole hospitality industry that might be out of work. And what industry will these waiters, these hospitality professionals go into? And I think that the wine industry is certainly, great potential. Although there will be job losses in the wine industry too, I think the fine wine industry has a lot of potential. And we spoke about the potential of marketing in the fine wine industry last week. We spoke about wine sales in the first week. What are the skills that you need to have or need to acquire to master wine sales? And what are the skills that you need to acquire to master marketing? Really, that's what we covered on. But today, it's more about winemaking, wine growing. And I said wine growing because I think we've moved on that you're a winemaker or a wine farmer. I think today you grow wine. And hopefully, Johan and Chris will touch on that because we need to be more connected with the soil, no matter which part of the wine process we're in. If you're a winemaker and you don't know what's going on in your soil, Johan, you're not a winemaker.
Yeah, Roland. I want to answer that, but I've got a dog crying at the door here. So can I just let
you take your dog.
Driving me nuts.
There's Donnie.
Sorry.
You go sort out your dog, and then I'll just explain what we're going to do.
I see somebody there is running. She's going to sort it out for me. All good.
Okay, cool. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to just bounce off all the panelists and just talk through their journey, because we've all had our own journeys in wine, and we've got some incredible people that have made some amazing success in the wine industry. And I'd like to hear from them what sort of skills they've picked up or acquired over this time to master their specific role in the wine industry. So I think Johan, maybe you're a good person to start with. And I've enjoyed a few webinars that Johan has been part of over the last couple of months and a few articles that he's been mentioned in. Johan is one of my heroes. I think no one better understands sustainable farming and winemaking like Johan, and it's going to be great to hear from you. So Johan, maybe just a very short intro into how you became this hotshot biodynamic farmer, and secondly, what are the skills that you have picked up doing your day-to-day work as a wine farmer?
Okay, firstly, just thank you for inviting me. And also, thank you for doing this. I think it's a great initiative. And, I saw a tweet of you the other day where you'd actually ordered some lunch from a well-known restaurant as well. And I just thought it was such a lekker thing to do in these times. People can get despondent quickly, and there's a lot of reason to become so. And it's lekker that there are people like you taking initiative and trying to make it better. And I'm grateful to be a part of that process tonight. My own story, it's kind of a funny one. It actually started with me trying to become a waiter, and they wouldn't take me, which is the short of it. I was on a waiting list at the Spur in Stellenbosch for about 6 months. And every time I went back, there were other people working there, but I never got the job. And I think it had something to do with my hair, because back in the day, I actually had quite long hair and was quite a rough young man in my youth. And then in terms of qualification, I had a master's degree in philosophy. So there's not many people queuing to employ a philosopher. So I had nowhere to turn, nowhere to go. And I just started working in vineyards to earn a bit of income as a student and to have some fun. And yeah, it was an incredible journey, and the journey is still unfolding. So I think what happened to me was I wasn't quite sure that, this was my calling, and I didn't really choose to do this. It was just an opportunity that came past, and I grabbed it, and I really enjoyed it. And I kind of got a little bit disillusioned by the financial or lack of financial reward of being a farm laborer. So I figured I had to kind of find a way out of that, and started to make a bit of wine, and out of that grew Reinecker wines. But I was given very good advice by a Dutch lady many years ago, and that was one must always try and surround yourself with people who are better than you. And when you do that, which is not a very difficult thing to do, you up your game, and you also don't sort of stand in the way of your own success. It sounds kind of weird, but I just set off, I don't know, it's almost 20, 30 years ago already, and I still try and look for people who are better than me, and just to try and stick with them and work with them. So that was one thing that really helped me a lot. The second thing was something. I had a guy, he worked at Protea Hotels, and he was quite high up. I wasn't sure if he was a CEO, but he was quite a proper figure in the hospitality industry. And this gentleman one day mentioned that when he hires people, he hires for attitude and trains for skill. And I gave that some thought. And, it's true. Today, as a business owner, I've learned to do the same. And also as a worker, it's not that you need to have all the capabilities or know everything, but what you need is a sort of a really positive outlook and attitude towards your work. And even if it's not like the ideal thing that you want, just get stuck in and give it everything you've got, and it then sort of evolves from there. And then I think the third thing for me, Roland, was really, it's something they teach us in karate, in martial arts, is no one is really born good at anything. Maybe some people are very lucky in that way, but most of us are not. So if you want to be successful, all you've got to do is just have good habits and repeat them over time, and just continue doing that. And then success sort of flows forward from that. And I mean, I'm skirting around the edges a bit, but I think those three things sort of come to mind when you ask me, where do I come from and how did it all start?
That's awesome, Johan. And tell me the day-to-day work that you have on your plate. How do you sort of have it all in your head? Do you have spreadsheets of all of the vineyards that you need to tick off? How does it all flow in your mind?
Man, I'm useless, to be honest. One of my favorite philosophers is Nietzsche, and he always says, out of chaos erupts the dancing star. So I think out of this sort of bit of creative madness comes good things. Now, I do my best. I'm still old school. Here's my diary. So I still write things down by hand every day, what to do. I'm a little bit technologically challenged. Yeah, I think my day, it's interesting. Definitely it's a seasonal thing as a farmer. This time of the year is fantastic. Winter is hard, it's cold, a lot of pruning, not enough sunlight. It's fun, but it's hard work. Spring makes me nervous because everything grows so quickly. It's almost impossible to keep your hand on the vineyards, and especially if you're farming whatever, organic or biodynamic. I think there's sort of a bit of an added risk there as well, and you really have to be on your game. And everything just grows, in terms of canopy management and all of those. Weed management for us as organic farmers is also a very big challenge. I've got sort of cows in rotating fast and furiously up until bud break. And then I have to come with alternative plans. And then that hard work carries on. Summer, harvest is hard. And then autumn, you get the cover crops in and you fix the roads and prepare them for winter. And now it's just lovely. It's not too hot, it's not too cold, it's not windy, it doesn't have that nervous tension of spring. And as a farmer, I can actually just relax, have a nice glass of red wine and reflect on stuff and not work in the business so much, but almost take a step back and work on it a bit and think about it and how to tweak it. And how to make next year better than the one that we just had. And yeah, try and think of all the things, sort of a creative brainstorming time, and then align them and pocket them and put a time frame to them and just keep on chipping away.
Hopefully all the viewers know Johan's principles and drink Johan's wine. But for those that don't, Johan, if you're working more sustainably and you're not using pesticides and chemicals and so on, you're farming more sustainably, do you have to think a few more steps ahead? Do you have to gather a huge amount of knowledge to do what you're doing? Or is there just a set way that you've learned over the years? How does that that flow work in what you do?
The flow is definitely different. I think things become more sort of proactive as opposed to reactive. You don't have a lot of heavy stuff you can fall back on to remedy mistakes you've made. So prevention really is better than cure if it comes to organic farming. I don't know if it's knowledge as much as it is understanding. It's kind of funny that, I remember when I studied philosophy, we had this professor, it came from Chile, and he spoke about the difference between knowledge and understanding. And he said that, he had a young daughter at that stage, and if you had to explain to her what being in love was like, there were so many angles to try and explain it. So I could take a sort of a scientific view and talk about endorphins and serotonin levels and stuff like that. And then you could take a romantic view and talk about poetry and Romeo and Juliet and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, when the daughter fell in love, her experience would be so much different from what he could have told her and prepared her for. And I think that's the fundamental difference between knowledge and understanding. I saw a tweet last night as well about a guy in the UK talking about biodynamic farms, and I could see he had a lot of knowledge. He'd obviously read up about it, but there was quite a little understanding of the process. And I think the understanding comes with experience. So just like doing it and keep on doing it over time. And then knowledge is absolutely key. But you also develop a sort of almost not an intuitive ability. I mean, that sounds very esoteric, but you get a gut feel for what to do. I don't know if you've ever been fortunate to prune a vineyard with someone like Rosa, for example. So if Rosa rocks up on the farm, she probably knows more about pruning than most people that I know. And she doesn't stand there and tell you, okay, you should do this for this vineyard. She actually just takes her secateurs and she walks into the vines, and she just spends a few minutes by herself, just sort of pruning and getting that flow going. And then out of that comes the plan for that specific vineyard. I think that's amazing. It's like years of skill that she's amassed. And then she just needs to get that flowing. And yeah, it works well that way, for me at least.
So if I get you right, Johan, if you had to try and put the skill down, it's about really just learning and trying to understand farming and getting to understand the principles of life, I guess.
I think so. And obviously for me specifically, there's a sort of there's always been this strive to find a balance between people and nature. I still find it today in my work. I remember when I was a student, I read about this guy that was growing vegetables in the St. Lucia forest in KZN. And it was a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It was a protected wilderness area. And this guy just wanted to grow some veggies, and he needed the space to do so. And a hippopotamus came and ate his vegetables. And he was really upset, and he killed the hippopotamus. And then there was a massive outrage on two fronts. Half the people were really upset that this guy were growing vegetables in a wilderness area and killing a hippopotamus to save his crops. And the other half of the people were really upset that, people worried more about the hippopotamus than a person trying to stay alive, and just growing himself some vegetables. And at the end of the day, that sort of binary thinking doesn't take one anywhere. It's the one isn't right and the other one is wrong. They've both got a point. So you kind of have to get past that problem and find a way where I can still live there, but perhaps not grow vegetables, perhaps get involved in a sort of a tourism job there, shows people that nature, still gets an income from that space, and you kind of change a compromise situation into a more synergistic one where they both benefit. So as an organic farmer or a biodynamic farmer, that also kind of becomes the crux of my life. A certain part of me loves nature. I love Jonkershoek and the beach and the sea, and I almost wish I wasn't a farmer, just like a game ranger. And I understand that I really work with soil and I have to build soil. But another part of me has to put food on the table and pay my bills and pay my kids' school fees and stuff like that. So I also need to make a buck. So I've got this continuous struggle on the farm. On the one hand, the short term, I'm kind of farming with my grapes and my wine, trying to stay alive. But in the long term, actually less becomes more, because even if you farm organically and biodynamically, you still interfere with nature to a greater extent than just allowed it to be a wilderness people. So there are days where I have this dream of just rewilding the farm, but I can't quite do that. But those are the sort of tensions that I deal with on a daily basis, and try and find a balance, and not just necessarily the one or the other, but see if I can't do both to a certain extent. I don't know if that makes sense.
That's great, Johan. I think we all have that tension in us sometimes, but you see it more often because you're working with the vineyards and plants every day. So I think we should move on to Donnie Carinus, the most famous farmer that you haven't heard of. And Donnie was one of our young guns a few years ago, and it was amazing how he could also talk about his job, his practice of growing wine. A wine grower, not so much a winemaker, but I'm sure you'll tell us that, Donnie. Donnie, tell us, you're just down the road. How did you get into farming? How did you become a farmer, and what skills have you acquired?
Yeah, thanks, Roland. Thanks for having me. Yeah, and, awesome to be Johan's neighbor, coolest neighbor around. Yeah, man. I'm one of 4 children. I've got 3 older sisters, so 4th generation on the farm. So I was kind of forced into it. But yeah, it was never kind of like you will go farm one day. But there was a slight nudge. But I got into it in a very kind of a company kind of setup. We were supplying grapes to a few bigger companies and so forth, and we and at that stage I wasn't too passionate about the farm. During school or even in university, like Johan, I majored in psychology and history, so I mean nothing to do with farming. And after university, I went to go do a harvest in California, and that's where I actually I stayed in a house with Butch, with Chris Arlight and Donnie Statler and Chris Bastard from Remhoogte. And yeah, so everyone in the States thought if you were from South Africa, you were either called Chris or Donnie. So, but we just had an amazing time there, and the passion for wine and for farming started growing a bit, and I thought it was, yeah, a few things that I could go back and apply back home. Got back home and started paging through the platter guide at that stage, and started phoning different wineries and winemakers, and I told them, listen, we've got I think we've got some quality grapes on the farm. Would they be interested in buying it? And that's just how I started growing a bit of a network, and started almost like Johan, waiting for the job at Spur. Didn't get a lot of I actually had a visit from a guy from a very well-known farm, and he was looking for Chardonnay, and he told me, listen, I'm desperate for Chardonnay, when he was looking at one of my blocks, and he said, but I'm not this desperate. So so also knew that I had to start doing things differently on the farm. And yeah, obviously that network started growing, and I started to spend more time with the guys actually making the final product. And creating a bit of a passion for it myself. I think back in the day, the job was just to supply grapes and then just wait for your paycheck, and the farmers were never interested in what the final product was supposed to be like. I think it's an odd industry. It's one of the only industries where you've got a very important part of the final product, and you don't really care about what happens with it when it leaves your farm. So yeah, and then started working with some awesome guys. Started supplying grapes to some friends. I kind of forced them to take the grapes. So I don't think I was such a good farmer at that stage, but it opened some doors for me, and it created a good platform. And and to be here today, I think it's an honor to talk with all these big guys in the industry. So that's kind of my backstory.
And Donnie, so you wake up in the morning, farming is on the agenda for the day. What sort of skills are you using throughout the day? How does that all work?
Sure, Roland. I think there's quite a big stigma around boere on farms. They've got a certain personality, and these and they've got a certain manner towards their staff. I think that's where the psychology came in. I think the skill set is I think people skills. How you manage people is the best thing. I mean, it's how you treat your staff on the farm, and then also your clients who buy grapes from you. And then just being there, just being in the vineyards, and try to spend as much possible time in the vineyards, and upskilling the whole time. Never too old to learn new tricks, and I like what Johan said about the Rosa. There's never a one certain recipe. There's always an approach to a certain vineyard on your farm, and you don't necessarily treat it the same way you did last year. Might be a bit older. There might be a few stunt paint gaps that you need to close. It changes all the time. So but I think for me, the most important thing is and skill set for me to learn is to also drink more wine, and try and learn what my clients want in the end of the day. I need to I need to know what they want from my vineyards, and that's mostly it. And just learning every day.
And Donnie, why do you think it is that winemakers are so praised in the world of wine, but yet the farmers, the viticulturists, the guys that are actually creating these beautiful grapes or helping these beautiful grapes grow, they're not as famous? I mean, in South Africa, if you're a aspiring viticulturist, what is your track forward? How do you get into it?
Well, I think for me, I always compare the winemakers most of the time to sprinters. They've got this amazing team getting them ready, but on the big day the camera is on the sprinter, and they're like blowing kisses towards the cameras, and all the focus and attention is on them, and the back staff doesn't necessarily get to stand on the podium. I think you have to be willing to take that one on the chin. There's a few awesome guys out there giving credit to where the grapes come from. I think it's so embarrassing sometimes. I mean, like someone like Lucas, I supply grapes to. He'll talk more about my vineyards and he'll talk about his wines, and then guys like Rhiannon will put the names of the growers on the bottle so that they can get some kind of recognition. But I think in the end of the day, you must also be happy to not get that recognition. And if you want to go into wine farming, it's not about recognition. It's about what you can bring to the final product, and you have to make a peace with it. That's your part of the puzzle. So. But for someone who wants to get into it, yeah, they're not necessarily going to spend a lot of time in the limelight, and you have to be, you have to make peace that that's not what you signed up for.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you, Donnie. And Donnie farms a whole bunch of very, very famous wines. You might not know them all, but of course he's got his own wines, the Carinas wines, which are fabulous. Even the Shannon and the Shiraz at $150. They're my go-to reds at the moment. At that price, they're unbelievable. And the quality is just shot up, Donnie, in the last 5 years. As you have maybe got to know your profession a bit better and what is required to make great wine.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's easy to kind of. I think we've got a good business plan where we just get some good quality grapes and we get the best winemakers to make our wines for us. That's kind of a foolproof plan. But yeah, it's obviously, like I mentioned earlier, the more you work with these guys, the more you kind of start to learn what they're looking for, and yeah, it's a good idea to steal with your eyes a bit and just to learn from them, and whatever makes them happy should be good enough for your own product.
Great. Thanks, Donnie. And folks, the questions you can just put in the Q&A and we'll answer them at the end. But now we're going to move on to a little bit more of the business angle and the winemaking angle. And we're going to speak to Chris and then Tinashe at the end. So Chris, sure, I don't know where to start, but an introduction. You've worked with Johan 12, 13 years ago at Reinecker. You first started studying accountancy at Stellenbosch, is that right? And then you had a bit of epiphany and you started studying winemaking. But you're a farmer, you're a winemaker, you're a business owner, you're a marketeer. You've kind of done a bit of everything and you've grown this incredible empire today. Tell us quickly about the journey, and then secondly, what mad skills do you have that can do all of this? Because it's incredible what you've done.
Cool. Well, thanks, Roland, and yeah, thanks for having us all here, Donnie, Johan, Tinashe, myself. It's I think what you're doing is great, and yeah, thank you for your support. And yeah, I know you've had probably the busiest week of your life, so to still be doing this I really appreciate it. I mean, you kind of said it. I came from Johannesburg, and when I was at school, didn't really know about wine. And the guidance counselor at school kind of looked at what I was good at in terms of subjects, and he was like, "You are an accountant." So I was like, "Okay, that sounds good." And fortunately, went to study in Stellenbosch, and pretty much from day one knew that wasn't exactly what I wanted to do with my life. I always tell people I had a really early midlife crisis, but I didn't know exactly what I did want to do. So I just kind of carried on, going through the accounting degree, and sort of in the second, third year, really got just obsessed with wine and initially wine tasting, but then the whole wine business and wine farming and everything. And one day met a guy who was studying winemaking, and I was like, "What? That's something you can do as a career?" I'd always thought it was a family business where it got handed down from generation to generation. So I remember phoning my parents that night saying, "I know what I want to do with my life," and fortunately they were very supportive of me. And I was lucky also to study at a really good time where the South African wine industry was kind of exploding. There were 30, 40 new wineries opening every year. So by the time I graduated, there was a shortage of winemakers, funny enough, which is kind of ironic given today's situation. But it was really easy for me to basically graduate and walk into a job, starting a new winery, running the vineyards, running the winery, doing everything. And for me, it was an amazing opportunity where I learned a lot, made a lot of mistakes, but it was an amazing experience for me to basically build my set of skills very, very quickly, managing people, managing the vineyards, planting vines, building a winery, fermenting the wines, doing absolutely everything. So I had an incredible 5 years, learning basically every single part of the industry. And yeah, that was my my introduction to it.
Can everyone do that, Chris, or are you just gifted? Are you a genius? Because a winemaking or a viticulturist is somewhat intuitive or artistic, but being a business owner, managing staff, and making sure the books are correct is a different type of skill, isn't it?
Yeah, it's obviously there's a lot of skills you need. In a position like that. I look back to when we started Mullineux with Andrew and myself in 2007. It was literally just the two of us in the winery and the vineyard. So we did absolutely everything from the vineyards to the winery to the packaging to the marketing, the invoicing, cleaning the bathrooms, everything. So driving the forklift, I've got a PDP, a forklift license, so yeah, you do need a wide set of skills, but as you grow a business, obviously you need to be able to delegate, and other skills start to become really important. So knowing, I think, what you want to do, having a clear vision for who you are, what makes you happy, what things you want to spend your time doing, and then finding, as I think Johan very, very sort of succinctly said, is find people who are better at you at other jobs that you maybe want to delegate, and let them get on with doing a better job than you at those things. But I think it's still in a position like mine, really important to have done everything, whether it's cleaning the drains or invoicing or doing the export certificates or pruning a vineyard. If you've done all those jobs, if someone else is doing it, you at least know they're doing their job properly, or something's amiss. You can very quickly pick out the places where things are not being done right. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question.
That makes a lot of sense, Chris. And if you look back now, how did you get it right? Was it just a complete and utter passion? Was it a goal of quality? Where do you think the success started or lied?
Yeah, I think again, Johan said it. You need to love wine. That's my view. Of course, it's a business, but it's the wine business. It's all about wine, and I think that's in my heart, and I'm sure everyone's heart in the wine industry. It's you need to have a true passion for wine. But more than that, you need to have a vision of what do you want to do. What do you want to be making? Where do you need to be based to do that? You need to have a very clear idea and a clear vision for that, and then go at that consistently. Don't, if you want to make 16% alcohol Cabernet or Syrah, or if you want to make 11% alcohol Cinsault, just do that. You're going to have people who love it. You're going to have people who are not going to love it. Don't let people criticize you and let that get to you. You must be consistent and stick with what you love and go for it. You have, the wine industry is, it's not like working in a restaurant where you have a chance every day to make another meal for somebody, or working in a bakery where you can bake something new every day. The wine industry takes a long time. It's many years of planning, of executing, of waiting for your wine to taste right before you release it. So if you're listening to people and taking criticism too much at heart, you're gonna get very confused and lose track. So it's important to have a super clear vision, and obviously that vision can evolve slowly over time, but stick with it, and that's I think very, very important. Yeah.
Last question, Chris. This obviously wouldn't have come to fruition without your wife, Andrea. And what sort of skills have you needed to grow a business to become successful with Andrea? I mean, that can't be easy, being married to someone, being in a family with someone, growing a family, and then growing an incredible business. How do you get that right, that balance?
Yeah, look, I think I'm very lucky with Andrea. We have extremely similar tastes in wine, and in life in general. We were lucky to work together for 2 years in Tulbagh at what's called Fable now, before we got engaged. So I think we saw working together that we have a very similar taste in wine and approach to wine. So it's actually very easy. We're like, one person that's actually two. So that's not a challenge. But I think taking a step back from that, we've in our business always been involved with partners. Whether when we started the winery, it was with Keith Prothero. We've now got a partner, Bass in Franschhoek, and I think that's one of the important things in my position is having that empathy and the ability to work with people, whether it's employees or partners in the business, or a wife who's heavily involved in the process. We're also very blessed to work with Rosa, as Johan mentioned, and yeah, I'm sure everyone knows Rosa is an extremely fiery person. She's got very strong ideas about everything. Andrea is exactly the same. You know, they're two very, very, very successful people because they've got very clear ideas about what they want to do. And my position often is in the middle, is being not the mediator, but someone who needs to let them both get on with things and do what they do very, very well. I think often in a position of leadership, it's getting people, putting them in their place, and as Johan said, don't get in the way. Let people run with it, and obviously be aware if they're not doing their job, or not, maybe not, you're not aligned in terms of the vision that we have and that they have, and then you can hopefully diplomatically go and say, look, this is maybe not quite what we had in mind, or so it's, yeah, people skills are really important, but it all starts with a passion for wine. We regularly get together with Rosa and taste our wines. She's our viticulturalist, but it's critical that she understands what we're trying to do with our wines. It's critical, and she demands that of us. She doesn't want to just be working in the vineyards. She wants to see the results of her work, and we love and appreciate that. So I think everybody in this industry, that love for the taste of wine is key and critical. Yeah.
Chris, thank you so much. Very wise words. Great. Let's move on to Tinashe, and you've got an amazing story, Tinashe, coming from Zimbabwe, of course, and maybe you can talk through a little bit about that, how you got into wine. I mean, that's a story in itself, and then going into the restaurant industry, becoming a sommelier at one of the greatest restaurants in the world. And recently now moving into your own wine label, which I think presents a different challenge altogether, and it requires different skills. So lots to talk about. So Tinashe, welcome. Yeah, tell us your story, please.
Yeah, thanks Roland for having me, and thanks Johan, Chris, and Danny. Nice to have you as well. Like you said, Zimbabwe, I came into South Africa 2008. Things weren't going very well up north. Just came back, one change of clothes with a backpack. And you soon realize, if you're an immigrant, the first mode is to survive. And, I was looking for jobs. I was working in a supermarket as a manager back in Zim, tried to find that kind of job here. It couldn't work because of various reasons, permits and all the stuff. Once you get your refugee statuses, which I got, the job I got was a baker's position at a Spine Observatory, which wasn't paying that enough, but it gave me a sense of welcome, learn the city, scan around what's going on. I knew it wasn't what I wanted, but it was very relevant at the point. But I was looking around where, fellow Zims and the community were making money. And I soon realized they were bringing much larger tips from the restaurant. So, one guy would come with 100 Rand tip a day, and that was what I was making in a week. So I soon realized, okay, I could make better money working in a restaurant. So I didn't have any experience, none at all. So I just knew you could draft a CV, put it on Gumtree. And one day I just got a call from the Roundhouse. They were just opening their new restaurant in Camps Bay. Went for a group interview. I just sat there, and I think what Johan says and the other guys were saying about attitude. So in that group interview, I think there were like 15 people. I was the least experienced. Everyone had worked in a restaurant, but when the guys came to me, I was just honest. I was like, guys, you must have picked my CV by mistake, or if you didn't, it clearly states I'm a baker at Spa. I don't know any wine. I just know red wine, white wine. But if you're willing to take me, I'm willing to learn and know. And the guys got me. They picked me. The following day, they called me for another interview, and I still remember them telling me, we picked you because you're the honest guy there. Everyone was just trying to be very clever, but you're in the right place. And later on, I realized that it was Let's Sell Lobster. So they were starting their wine program there. So literally, they wanted people without prior experience. They had to take you in, teach you about wine. So for me, it was quite interesting. So I'd say at that time, it was more or less trying to get into an industry and learning. So I literally learned how to hold a plate, clear a table, how to pronounce foie gras, even Merlot to Merlot, that kind of thing. But it was intriguing and exciting at the same time, because I've always been someone who likes to learn and quickly scan around and know where the opportunities are. So it clearly, I'd learn the manuals, I'd learn everything until, I was much more confident, always felt hunger to do more. I left the Roundhouse, worked with Bruce Robertson at the showroom for a while. He closed down, and One and Only Hotel opened. Same thing. The person who hired me at the Roundhouse was actually recruiting at the One and Only and said, Tinashe, you can come through. There are some positions. I know the showroom is closed down. I go there, another group interview, and Kent Shimaya was the one conducting the interview. So probably he picked up that I was a bit glued in terms of wine than the rest of the people. So he stopped the interview, called the head sommelier who was opening for the One and Only, take this guy, I think he's better in your team. And I remember fighting guys. I don't know what this wine thing, I applied for a waiter. I just want to be a waiter, and I don't learn this wine thing. So they only convinced me because they say, you know what, if you're gonna be a wine steward, you're gonna earn more money than the waiter. And it's quite a good profession. So I joined the team. So it kind of opened up the world for me, because when I got on the wine team, there was Andre Becker, there was Eric Potter. So there was almost like something I could aspire to. That's where I realized there was a sommelier. I got there, I was a wine waiter. I got under the wings of Andre Becker very quickly. He was teaching me. I was learning all I could about the wine from the wine loft, and it was One and Only, glittering. I was working in maize. And I was soon really, it was just fast track. And once I realized this is what I want to do, I could realize making wine wasn't the issue as well. It was just more about making money. So I worked at the One and Only for a few years. Obviously, in 2013, I was working in Nobu now. By that time, I was a junior sommelier. Also trying, and in that time, I was also doing accounting. So I think I was in my third year of accounting. I was doing wine as well. I just became so frustrated that I wasn't growing, because there was a head sommelier then, and I saw, what, maybe wine is not my thing. So behind the back, I went to the finance department and said, okay, I'm doing accounting. I'm in my third year. I want to switch positions. So I worked in accounting as a clerk for like a week. Then the F&B guys realized I was gone, and everyone was like, where's Tinashe? So they came fetching for me again and said, okay, it's fine. We're going to promote you. We'll put you in Nobu to be sommelier there. Everything's going to be fine. Then I came back into wine. So 2013, there was the Inter Hotel Challenge, which happened, and I entered. I was the best wine steward. Also, it put me on the limelight, and Oyster Box came knocking. So I went to Oyster Box in Durban, worked there for a year and a half as the head sommelier. Then Wave left the test kitchen. Somehow I knew Luke because he used to come at Noble with Finlay and his wife. So we kind of had a bit of a rapport. So when the position opened at the test kitchen through mutual friends, they joined us in, and Luke was saying, okay, this could be a shot. And here I was at the test kitchen, best restaurant in Africa, one of the best in the world. Oh, man, I couldn't really, refuse the offer, even if it meant I was getting a pay cut coming from the Oyster Box. Then I just embraced it, and worked there for 4.5 years, and now, I am.
Okay, but you started making wine somewhere along the way. You're clearly a very ambitious person. I mean, you went from baker to accountant to wine waiter, sommelier, and now you're a brand owner. Tell us about Kamusha Wines. You're not the winemaker. How involved do you get in the winemaking?
Yeah, so I think, if you say winemaking is quite flattering, and I'm listening to Chris, Johan, and Danny. I think they are the proper winemakers or wine grower. People throw the term around, but for me, probably a brand owner suits, or maybe a master blender. I'll really be honored in be calling that. And, it just came about once I got so immersed into wine and realizing why people drink wine and why wine is there, who's drinking wine. I almost embraced it, but I always felt, because I came almost as an outsider, wine wasn't part of my culture, I came and embraced the culture, I loved it, but somehow still, I just felt the language and the speak wasn't really talking to me in a way. And when I got into these positions, I also got like other people coming behind, junior sommeliers or people my kind who were starting to almost listen to me. So without wanting to offend or disrupt the industry, I almost thought if I could bottle my wine and talk about my wine in the way I want to, it would probably make much more sense, if I may put it that way. So it was a way of me expressing how I got into wine and how you can drink wine, enjoying it, embracing where I'm coming from. So that's why I started Kamusha, because Kamusha in Shona, it means your roots, your home, your origins. So I just wanted to make that connection that, okay, I've embraced this wine, which is not entirely part of my culture, but I still embrace my culture, and how can I get the two, or how can I help someone else bridge the two? So that's how I came up with Kamusha wine, to be honest. And in terms of winemaking, I'm not involved in the actual growing of the vineyards or making. It's not something that I enjoy. I totally respect the guys because they spend their lives in the vineyards. And for me to come and claim that I'm making wine, I think it's just not right. I enjoy drinking wine. I enjoy blending wine, and I enjoy talking about wine. So I just wanted to be that extra voice, that different voice, which is speaking about wine. So I trust my winemaker, Ati, from Oxter Winery, who's making fantastic wines. I trust him with everything to give me quality juice. So I just go in the vineyards, in the cellars when it's about blending time. I make my own blends, then he bottles for me, I do the rest.
Cool. And what is your vision with the wines? What do you want to put in the bottle? What do you want to communicate with your wines to your customers?
Yeah, that's been quite a bit of a challenge because I remember when I was starting it, obviously I was in the test kitchen and working with Luke. I was like, Luke, this is what I want to do. And Luke was like, Tinashe, if you're going to make a wine brand, it better work in the test kitchen. Otherwise, if you can't sell it anyway, at least you can sell it in the test kitchen. But, so when I started with my first wine, it was almost expressing what I loved, what wines I enjoyed, and what I can present it on the table. But, soon when you put the wines out there, you realize not everyone has your own taste. And people would buy it because of Tinashe, but they won't buy it back again because it's not their taste. So I kind of had to shift it up and, blend with a conscious decision of people who are going to drink the wine. So as of now, I've also have, the wines that are my taste, which is in a different range. And I've come up with another range where I feel it will talk to the audience or the customers I wanted to, and almost blend it in that similar fashion. Still good quality wines, but speaking to them. So in terms of what I want to put in a bottle, personally, is love that I enjoy, purity, wines that have a sense of place, because I still want to recognize the person who's made the wine and where it's being made from. And also because I'm a brand owner, I've got that liberty to play around. So I just use it to my advantage and give the people what they want.
Awesome. When are we going to see your new wines out, Tinashe?
So they've actually been labeled today, wow. Ready in the next 2 weeks.
Okay, well, watch out. I'm sure we'll taste them and have them available. That's amazing. One last question, Tinashe. Last week we spoke more about marketing and social media. and you're quite active on social media, Instagram, Twitter. Do you think that's a big part of what you do and how you promote yourself and the brand?
Yeah, it's definitely, I've used that to my advantage. You know, if you don't own a land or you've got history to stand on, you know, it's gotta be the presence which gets you out there. So I've quite used it. I enjoy it, and I always feel, if, especially going out to, you know, young sommeliers or other sommeliers going around, or in just everyone in general, I believe if you're not creating anything for the internet at the moment, you're as good as nothing. You know, no one knows you. So it's quite, it's dangerous in a way, but I've always used vulnerability into my advantages. Even if growing in my career, you know, I've always been show that vulnerable side about me, because it means that people embrace it and want to teach me. So even on social media, I try to be vulnerable, as authentic as possible, and relate to my audience. So most of the audience on my social media platforms are my customers. So, you know, if you're in front of the customer, more chances of you selling wine or whatever product you have. So I use social media very well. I'm active into it, and probably gonna even be more.
Amazing, great story, Tinashe, and hopefully it gives some of you some inspiration as to what is out there. If you don't have a job and you're looking to start something fresh, then you know Tinashe's got an amazing story. I think tenacity is one of the traits that I can hear in your story. You were certainly tenacious in getting to where you want to be. So amazing story. Guys, are there any other added bits you want to add to this? We could talk about organic winemaking, or Chris is there.
Yeah, I was just, you know, I think maybe one of the things that's really important to think when you think about skills right now is how the wine world is changing and has changed basically the last 3 months, and the skills that you know someone like me or you know people in my generation of in the wine industry needed 10, 20 years ago are definitely not exactly the same skills that are needed now. There's a whole different way of selling wine. There's different opportunities as Tinashe is leading the way in terms of making wines. You don't need to own a vineyard. It's obviously important to work with special vineyards, you know, whether it's vineyards like winemaker's or Carinas, you need to work with special vineyards, but the wine industry is changing so quickly at the moment that it's you know, I think there's a lot of opportunities that are going to be coming out to get into the wine industry in different ways, not the traditional ways. And I think if you're interested in getting into the industry, there's obviously skills that you might need, but you also need to think of the skills that you have as whoever you are. What do you have to offer to a winery or to what is unique to you that may help you to start a wine business? Because it's definitely changing. The you know, social media is so much more important. There's wineries that are doing contract winemaking for brands. So the models are changing very, very, very quickly, and I think it's important to not only look at sort of what you need to have, but what do you have yourself that you can either offer to a winery in terms of a job. You know, all these wineries now building e-commerce websites and getting onto social media. A lot of them have no idea how to do it, and they're all scrambling to try and learn it. Maybe you're an expert already in that kind of thing, or you know, there's opportunities opening up now to get your foot in the door, and if you can get your foot in the door, prove yourself, do that one job extremely well, that business relies on you and realizes, wow, this person is an asset. Other things will start opening up for you. They'll be like, wow, this person does this amazing thing. Let's try and also let them do another job, and you can get into this industry in a different way to what most other people have. So I think it's obviously challenging times right now, but there's a lot of opportunities as well, I think.
Yeah, there's a question there from Amand about how do you get into the industry, and I think that's very apt just to round off some of the discussions that we've had over the last 3 weeks. And I too studied business. I didn't study wine at all, but I found the passion at Stellenbosch University for wine. And I just went straight into wine. I wanted to be around wine. And I think that once you start immersing yourself in a field, you start learning the skills required to master it. And that's really all I can say is if you're interested in something, you will find the right people. The wine industry is a very generous industry, whether it be sharing wines or sharing skills or knowledge. Johan, I remember coming to you when I was at the Stellenbosch Wine Society. It was one of the first visits I'd ever done in Stellenbosch. And you had this long hair, and it was in that little rondavel. And I remember tasting your pinotage, and you were very proud of the fact that it fermented in 1 day. And I spoke to a few winemakers. I said, "Is this really possible? Can you ferment in 1 day?" And you were very proud of the fact because of this biodynamics, which I thought was a really strange concept at the time. But I remember that it's almost 20 years later, and I remember how you made an imprint on me, and you've been someone to look up to over the last 20 years. And I think what I'm trying to say is that to get into the wine industry, you just need to live it, I guess, and you'll find your own path.
Roland, yeah, man, I want to add to that, if I may. When I started out, I was quite nervous, like we all are. Well, most of us at least. I didn't have a lot of confidence, and I was sort of keen to start, but not sure what it would involve and if I would be successful or not. And I think sort of the journey we took with, was a sort of a slightly unconventional one, which gave even more risk and less surety to it. And I don't know who all is listening tonight, but I had the privilege of meeting a lady called Jean Malherbe. She used to have a farm, Blauwblommetjieskloof in Wellington. And I met her through biodynamics because she was the doyen of biodynamics. And she wasn't really a wine person at all. But when I wanted to start Reinecker Wines, it was really a humble affair and a little cow shed, and I had a very slim chance of success. And I was so scared to do it. And then she sent me a poem. And the poem was written by Goethe. And I've got it here on my phone. I just went through my phone and I got it. And I thought it would be lucky to just share it with the people out there. If you don't have a job, you want a job and you're not sure if you have the right skills, and maybe you're scared that you're not going to be successful. So Jean sent me this poem, and it may sound a bit crazy, but it proved to be true. So what it says, it's by Goethe, and it says, "Until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there is one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans. That is, the moment one definitely commits oneself, providence moves too." So it sounds very philosophical, but it kind of ties up with what you just said, Roland. And that is, even if you're not sure, I mean, to be honest with you, I had no idea Reinecker Wines would be what Reinecker Wines is now. I had no idea. Like Chris said, I also did multiple jobs, from logistics and sending the wrong wines to the Netherlands, and farm worker and winemaker and financial oak who couldn't do it. But do all of it, go for it, and just stick with it. Don't be overwhelmed by all of this. It seems so daunting, but it's amazing. As soon as you commit, stuff happen and they fall in place to make your dreams come true. It's hard to explain it. You meet people that you never thought you'd meet who help you along the way in various ways. So if you just have that intention and you go out and you try your best, stick with it, and you'll be amazed at how life steps in and helps you realize your dreams and your future. Yeah, for me, that was a big thing.
Donnie, and I think that's also been apt in your career as well, because you're probably friends with most of your customers and your suppliers. And I mean, you have a job, but it's really just your life, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And I've made some of my best friends through this, because it's yeah, it's been through my whole growing phase as a farmer as well. I've got to know all these amazing people, and I just wanted to add to that as well. What the others have just said is that I wouldn't have been where I'm now. I've still got a long way to go, but if it wasn't for the open hands of our industry, I think we've got such an awesome industry and role players in the South African landscape at this stage. And it's not a survival of the fittest mentality anymore. It's like, how can we help you? And when you've got issues in the vineyard, you phone someone smarter than you, or you when there's issues with the wine, we see it everywhere. Like, you get your friends in to come and taste and to give their opinion, and yeah, it's only natural to levitate towards people who's got the same principles and same passions than you have, and it's been amazing to share this journey, and like I said, still a long way to go with all these amazing people, and I'm really excited to see where we're going to head to. I mean, winemaking in South Africa now is at a awesome stage now, and can you just imagine what we're going to do if farming also gets to that level? We're going to be unstoppable, and we need more farmers. We need more passionate people, yeah, it's good to hear that there's quite a bit of them around.
Amazing. Thanks, Donnie.
Donnie, I just want to say, in terms of the farming and the vineyards, Andrea, my wife, is American, from California, and in California, with the really well-known vineyards, which Karina's, I mean, you guys are rock stars. If you want to buy grapes from Bedrock Vineyard or from Tokelon or Beckstoffer, they won't sell you the grapes unless you put the vineyard name on the label. It's like, you don't even go and speak to them unless that's understood. So I think that should be done more and more now in South Africa. You guys deserve the credit, and it should be, you guys must demand it, man.
Thanks, Chris. No, we had a bit of a run-in with one of our latest labels with someone else who, yeah. Anyway, but we
just
wanted
register the trademark before someone else does. That's important.
We actually wanted to levitate the area, and we wanted to, if anyone else wanted to make a wine from the area and wanted to call it the same thing, if it was a Reineke, whatever the name is, or Van Locherenberg, whatever the name is, we would have welcomed it. And just to add to that, I worked at a cellar called Alpha Omega in California, and I remember the first day we went out to Tokelon, Beckstoffer vineyards. We worked with all those vineyards, but it was at Stagecoach Vineyard where I got out. And I wanted to get into the good book straight away, and I jumped out to open the gate, and they looked at me as if I was crazy. And then all of a sudden, the gate opened automatically. It wasn't a South African gate. So yeah, no, it's it'll be amazing awesome. if we can start doing that more, and just proclaim the vineyards a bit more. And yeah, kudos to those guys who are already doing it. It's an awesome initiative.
Cool.
Well, thanks very much, guys. The industry's moved on so much in the last 10 years. Farming has become so much more important. Organic production of not only wine, but everything else, I think, is going to become more and more top of mind and pertinent in today's society. I'm a firm believer that what you put into your body is what you get out. And if you're putting chemicals and pesticides into your vineyards and into your food, you're maybe not getting out what you should be. So we could talk about organics and biodynamics maybe at another conference. Manfred, thanks for the question on biodynamics. I think we're going to have another seminar on that at another stage. But watch the space. I think in the next 5 to 10 years, if you're not farming sustainably or leaning towards organics, you're probably going to be left behind. I think that's the way that the world is going. Just to finishing up by saying that Wine Cellar is offering 4 apprenticeships, and if you haven't applied, really you're going to get stuck into the world of wine. You're going to learn about wines from South Africa, from all over the world. You're just going to get immersed in the industry, and it will be a good place just to get involved, and it might be a springboard. So apply at apprenticeships at winecellar.co.za, and maybe you can join this amazing industry, make friends for life and a new career, and have wonderful people like this to talk to. So thanks to all the panelists across the last 3 weeks, and thanks Chris, Johan, Tinashe, Donnie, for joining us. I think it's been an amazing session. You guys are full inspiration, and well done. We love you. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having us.
Drink Roland's sherry. It's awesome.
Yo, that's
my
lovely.
sherry, Chris. Yes.
It's half the bottle's
Cheers,
done.
guys.
It's awesome.
Yes,
Yes, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah,
Thank you.
good.